Another backwater dirtball, senior xenobiologist Krell Zaphon sighed, his 4 eye stalks drooping with disappointment as he studied the holographic projection of the blue-green planet. Primitive communications technology, laughable attempts at space exploration, and wait, what's this? Krell's upper right eye stalk twitched with sudden interest. His slender, 6-fingered hand danced across the control panel, zooming in on a particular section of the third planet from the unremarkable yellow star. "Computer, run that atmospheric analysis again," he commanded, his voice carrying the distinctive nasal resonance of the Vexrillian species. Analysis complete. The ship's AI responded in its monotonous tone. Atmosphere contains significant traces of industrial pollutants, radioactive particles consistent with primitive fission technology, and large quantities of carbon emissions. Fascinating. Krell's skin shifted from its normal pale blue to an excited purple. A Class 3 developing civilization. And right in the middle of supposedly empty space. The Galactic survey missed this completely. First Officer Plex Doran entered the observation deck, her thick-scaled hide making a soft scraping sound against the metallic floor. "Another disappointment, Krell? You've been chasing myths for 3 standard cycles now." "Not this time." Krell practically bounced on his thin, double-jointed legs. "Look at these readings. This species has discovered electricity, basic computing, and rudimentary spaceflight, but they're clearly pre-warp and haven't developed quantum communications. They're ripe for first contact protocols." Plex didn't look convinced. Her reptilian features remained stoically unimpressed. "The captain won't divert our mission for another one of your discoveries. Remember the gas giant that you thought contained sentient clouds?" "That was an honest mistake," Krell waved dismissively. "But this is different. Look at these structures," he pointed to the crude cities visible on the hologram. "And these primitive vehicles. They're still using combustion engines, Plex. In combustion engines. Can you imagine?" "I can imagine Captain Nalora's face when you suggest we waste valuable time on yet another wild tangent," Plex replied dryly. But Krell was already compiling his report, his fingers a blur over the holographic interface. "According to preliminary scans, they call themselves humans, and their planet is designated Earth in their dominant languages. They have nation-states, crude nuclear weapons, and have only reached their own moon. Classic Class 3 development pattern." "What's so special about another primitive species?" Plex asked, her tail twitching with irritation. Krell turned all 4 eye stalks toward his colleague. "Don't you see? The Galactic Confederation's mandate is clear: guide developing species toward proper civilization. We could be the first contact team. Our names in the historical archives. Krell Zaphon, discoverer of humanity." "You're getting ahead of yourself," Plex warned. 3 hours and 1 heated debate with Captain Nalora later, Krell stood triumphantly on the bridge as the sleek research vessel Boundless Curiosity changed course toward the insignificant blue planet. "This is highly irregular," Captain Nalora grumbled, her crystalline exoskeleton glinting under the bridge lights. "The Galactic survey hasn't cleared this sector for contact missions." "Which makes this discovery even more significant," Krell countered, practically buzzing with excitement. "Just think, Captain. We could be the ones to guide an entire species into the galactic community. Teach them proper civilization before they develop their own misguided methods." "Fine," the captain conceded reluctantly. "But this is your project, Zaphon. If these humans turn out to be another disappointment, it's on your record." Krell barely heard the warning. His mind was already racing with plans for humanity's glorious ascension under his expert guidance. These primitive beings had no idea how fortunate they were about to become. "Prepare the first contact protocols," he announced grandly to the bridge crew. "We have a species to enlighten." "That can't possibly be right," Krell muttered, tapping the sensor readout with a frustrated finger. "Run the scan again." The Boundless Curiosity had been in Earth orbit for 6 hours, and nothing was making sense. Krell's excitement had gradually morphed into bewilderment as the sensor data continued to contradict itself in the most perplexing ways. "I've run it 14 times, sir," replied Technician Mira Lux, her bioluminescent skin pulsing with annoyance. "The results are consistent, even if they are unusual." Plex leaned against the bulkhead, arms crossed over her scaled chest. "Having second thoughts about your precious discovery?" "No. Well, maybe," Krell admitted, eyes swiveling in 4 different directions as he tried to process multiple data streams simultaneously. "Look at these energy readings. Their power grid is absurdly inefficient, running primarily on fossil fuels and basic fission. Yet somehow they're managing to maintain a global information network with billions of connected devices. Perhaps they simply developed their technology in a different sequence than most species," suggested junior anthropologist Tark Weaver, but the only member of the crew who seemed as enthusiastic as Krell. His translucent, jellyfish-like body bobbed slightly with excitement. "That's not all," Krell continued, bringing up new holograms. "They've sent primitive probes to other planets in their system, but haven't established permanent bases on their own moon. They have weapons that could destroy their entire civilization, but they're still fighting with projectile firearms in regional conflicts. And this." He pulled up another display. "They're producing enough food to feed their entire population twice over, yet millions are starving. It makes no sense." "Sounds like a deeply dysfunctional society," Plex observed dryly. "Maybe we should leave them to sort themselves out." "No, Krell insisted, pacing the deck nervously. "The contradictions are precisely why they need our guidance. They've clearly developed technology without the corresponding social advancement. Classic mistake for young species." Captain Nalora entered the observation deck, her crystalline form casting prismatic reflections across the walls. "Have you made sense of your humans yet, Xenobiologist Zaphon?" "Not exactly, Captain," Krell admitted reluctantly. "There are some unexpected anomalies in their development pattern." "Such as?" "Well, for one thing, their communications are bizarrely compartmentalized. They have primitive radio broadcasts, satellite transmissions, and a planetary data network. But it's all messy, unorganized. And there's something odd about their satellite coverage. There are gaps that don't make strategic sense." "Perhaps," ventured Tark, his transparent tendrils waving excitedly, "we should observe them more directly. The planetary scans can only tell us so much." Krell's eyes brightened. "Yes, we need to make landfall. See these beings up close." "Out of the question," Captain Nalora stated firmly. "First contact protocols require." "With respect, Captain," Krell interrupted, "first contact protocols are designed for species with consistent technological development. The humans are all over the place. We need to understand them better before formal contact." After 30 minutes of heated debate, Captain Nalora finally relented. "Fine. 1 shuttle, minimal crew, observation only. You will land away from population centers and maintain stealth protocols." "Of course, Captain." Krell agreed enthusiastically, already mentally selecting his landing team. "I'm coming too," Plex announced unexpectedly. "Someone needs to make sure you don't get carried away." Krell barely heard her, busy examining settlement patterns on the holographic globe. "This area looks promising," he said, highlighting a region. "Rural enough to avoid immediate detection, but close to what appears to be a small human settlement. We can observe their daily routines without causing a panic." "Your record will show that I advised against this," the captain said sternly. "Noted, Captain," Krell replied absently, his mind already on the surface, imagining the accolades he would receive for guiding a new species into the galactic community. "Prepare the shuttle for launch. We make contact with humanity tomorrow." Little did Krell know that his discreet observation was already being monitored by no fewer than 7 Earth defense systems, each tracking the alien vessel with amused interest. "Atmospheric entry in 30 seconds, announced Mira from the shuttle's control panel, her skin glowing a nervous yellow-green. stealth shields at maximum capacity. Krell adjusted his ceremonial science officer regalia, ensuring the medals of academic achievement were prominently displayed across his chest. He'd spent 3 hours selecting the perfect outfit for humanity's first glimpse of an advanced galactic species. Remember, he instructed his small team, these primitives will likely be overwhelmed by our appearance. They may prostrate themselves or display fear behaviors. Remain calm and project benevolence. Plex rolled her reptilian eyes. They're not pets, Krell. Of course not. They're an emerging sentient species in need of guidance, Krell replied, offended. We must make a suitable impression. The shuttle smoothly penetrated Earth's atmosphere, its advanced technology negating any friction or heat signature that might alert the primitive human tracking systems. At least, that's what Krell believed. Landing zone identified, Mira reported. Small settlement with approximately 50 structures. Minimal technology detected. Population estimate, 300 humans. Perfect, Krell exclaimed. A manageable group for first contact. Set us down in that open area. He pointed to what appeared to be a community gathering space near the center of the settlement. The sleek alien craft descended through wispy clouds, its silver hull catching the morning sunlight. Krell had deliberately chosen daylight hours for maximum visibility. The shuttle's anti-gravity engines hummed softly as it gracefully settled onto the grassy field. Atmospheric analysis complete. Breathable, though the nitrogen-oxygen ratios are slightly off from our optimal range. Environmental suits recommended but not required, Tark announced, his jellyfish body undulating with excitement. Engage the universal translator, Krell commanded, and prepare the greeting holograms. The shuttle's ramp extended with a dramatic hiss of escaping air, deliberately engineered to create an impressive entrance. Fog like coolant vapors swirled around the opening as dramatic lighting illuminated the descending aliens. Krell stepped forward, leading the procession with his arms spread wide in the universal gesture of peaceful intent. Behind him, a massive hologram projected from the shuttle, displaying the symbols of the Galactic Confederation in swirling, luminescent colors. People of Earth. Krell announced grandly, his translator converting his speech to what it identified as the local dialect. We come from beyond your stars. I am Senior Xenobiologist Krell Zaphon of the Galactic Confederation, and we bring greetings from the civilized worlds. He paused, waiting for the gasps of awe, the screams of fear, or the bowing of primitive worship that the first contact manuals had prepared him for. Instead, a small gathering of humans stood casually observing them. Some held devices pointed at the aliens' primitive recording technology, Krell assumed. A few seemed to be consuming food while watching. One was even sitting on a portable chair, legs crossed casually. Howdy, said an older human with facial hair, lifting a beverage container in greeting. Welcome to New Millfield. Nice entrance. The fog machine was a good touch. Krell's eye stalks twitched in confusion. This wasn't the reaction he had anticipated. Thank you, he replied, momentarily flustered. Do you understand who we are? Folks from space, right? Said a younger human, not looking up from her handheld device. Cool ship. What's your top speed? Plex stepped forward. You don't seem surprised by our appearance. An elderly human female chuckled. Honey, we've got stranger-looking folks at the county fair costume contest. Though I gotta say, those eyeballs on stalks are pretty impressive. Animatronics? They're actual eyes, Krell responded, his confusion deepening. You've encountered other alien species before? Nope, can't say that we have, replied the man with the beverage. First ones to visit New Millfield, far as I know. You folks hungry? Darlene's got a potluck going at the community center. Her 7-layer dip is out of this world. He paused, then laughed, no pun intended. Tark floated closer to Krell. This reaction is highly unusual for a first contact scenario, he whispered. According to the manual, they should be experiencing profound existential shock. I'm aware, Krell hissed back. Something was very wrong here. A small human child approached, looking up at Krell with curious eyes. Are you really from space? Can your ship go faster than light? Do you use quantum entanglement for communication or something more advanced? Krell stared at the child, alarm bells ringing in his mind. How could a primitive human child possibly know about quantum entanglement communications? That's enough questions, Tommy, said a woman, gently pulling the child back. Let our guests get settled before you start the interrogation. She smiled at Krell, but something in her eyes made his skin shift to a nervous gray. We've got coffee and donuts, she added pleasantly. Unless you'd prefer something else. We're not really sure what you folks eat. Krell glanced back at his team, who looked equally bewildered. This was definitely not how first contact with a primitive species was supposed to go. The community center of New Millfield was a quaint, wooden structure that Krell estimated used building techniques at least 2 centuries behind Galactic standards, perfect for a demonstration of superior technology that would properly establish the relationship between advanced benefactors and grateful primitives. As I was explaining, Krell continued, having spent the last 20 minutes describing the Galactic Confederation to the gathered humans. Our civilization spans thousands of star systems. We've mastered faster than light travel, matter energy conversion, and cognitive network intelligences. A bored-looking teenage human looked up from her device. So like warp drives, replicators, and AI? Cool. Krell's upper eye stalks twitched in irritation. These humans kept reducing his magnificent explanations to simplistic terms from what he assumed must be their primitive entertainment media. Well, not exactly, he corrected. Our propulsion systems create localized space-time distortions that. Alcubierre drives interrupted a middle-aged human wearing what appeared to be farming attire. You compress space in front and expand it behind, creating a bubble of normal space in which the ship resides, technically not exceeding light speed locally. Krell's mouth hung open for a moment. That's surprisingly accurate. How could you possibly know that? The farmer shrugged. Just a guess. Makes sense, right? Einstein's equations allow for it with negative energy density. Plex stepped closer to Krell. Something's not right here, she whispered. These responses are inconsistent with their technological level. Maybe they're just unusually intelligent for primitives, Krell whispered back, though doubt was creeping into his voice. Deciding to move things along, Krell reached into his equipment pouch and withdrew a small, translucent cube. Allow me to demonstrate some of our basic technology, he announced. With a quick gesture, he activated the device, which projected a perfect, rotating hologram of Earth above it. This is a real-time quantum imaging device. It can show any location in your solar system with perfect accuracy. He expected gasps of amazement. Instead, he got polite nods and a few appreciative murmurs. That's neat, said an elderly woman named Martha, who had earlier insisted on giving Tark a homemade cookie, despite his lack of a conventional digestive system. The resolution's pretty good. What's the refresh rate on that quantum thingy? Krell blinked all 4 eyes simultaneously. The refresh rate? Yeah, how quickly it updates. And does it have any lag when you're viewing objects at the edge of the solar system? Light takes a while to travel from Neptune, you know. It's instantaneous, Krell stammered. It doesn't rely on electromagnetic radiation like your primitive, like conventional imaging systems. Quantum entanglement, then? Asked a teenage boy, not looking particularly impressed. But Mom's got a similar setup for her home security system, but the battery life sucks. Krell's skin shifted to a confused yellow. Your mother has quantum imaging security? Tommy's exaggerating again, the boy's mother said quickly, giving her son a pointed look. It's just regular old cameras, nothing fancy. Determined to salvage the situation, Krell put away the imager and pulled out his most impressive portable device, a molecular restructuring tool. This device can rearrange matter at the atomic level, he explained, his confidence returning. Observe. He pointed the device at a half-empty coffee cup on the table. With a soft hum, the liquid inside transformed into a small, perfectly formed crystal sculpture of the community center. This, finally, elicited some sounds of appreciation from the gathered humans. "Now that's pretty cool," said the man who had first greeted them. "Matter manipulation at the quantum level? What's your energy source for something like that?" "We use a compact zero-point energy extractor," Krell explained automatically, before realizing again that such a concept should be beyond human comprehension. "It draws power from the quantum vacuum," he added suspiciously. "Fascinating," said a quiet woman who had been observing silently from the corner. "And how do you deal with the Heisenberg uncertainty principle when manipulating individual atoms? I would think quantum jitter would be a problem." Krell stared at her. "We use a specialized field to temporarily suspend quantum indeterminacy in the affected area," he replied slowly. "Something that took our civilization 300 years to develop." "Makes sense," the woman nodded casually. "I've often thought that would be the logical approach." Plex moved closer to Krell again. "We need to talk. Now," she hissed. They excused themselves and stepped outside the community center, followed by Tark and Mira. "This is impossible," Krell whispered urgently once they were alone. "These humans shouldn't even understand the concepts we're discussing, let alone have insights about them. Their questions are too specific, too technical." "They're playing us," Plex stated flatly. "This whole primitive village thing is some kind of act." "But our scans showed their global technology is limited to basic computing, crude space exploration, internal combustion engines," Krell protested. "Maybe what we scanned is what they wanted us to see," Mira suggested, her skin pulsing with warning colors. "I noticed something odd about their communications networks. There were gaps in coverage that didn't make sense unless they were deliberately hiding something." "That's absurd," Krell scoffed, though with diminishing conviction. "Why would an advanced civilization pretend to be primitive?" Tark's translucent body rippled thoughtfully, "To observe how visitors respond to seemingly defenseless planets. As a test, perhaps." A chill ran through Krell's slender body. He glanced back at the community center, where the humans were casually chatting and eating snacks as if meeting aliens was an everyday occurrence. "We need to get back to the ship," he decided. Now. "I think I left my molecular analyzer inside," Krell announced to his team as they hurried toward their shuttle. "I'll just run back and get it." "We can replace the equipment," Plex argued, clearly anxious to leave. "Let's go." "It contains sensitive Confederation technology," Krell insisted. "I can't leave it in primitive hands, even accidentally." Before Plex could protest further, Krell had already turned back toward the community center. But instead of entering through the front door, he circled around to the back of the building. Something wasn't adding up, and his scientific curiosity demanded answers. The rear of the building looked ordinary enough: weathered wooden siding, a few windows, an old-fashioned metal door. Krell removed a small scanner from his pocket and aimed it at the structure. The readings made him gasp. "Impossible," he whispered. According to his scanner, the ordinary-looking building was lined with energy-dampening fields, quantum shielding, and molecular diffusion barriers, technology that should be centuries beyond human capability. Suddenly, the back door opened. The quiet woman who had asked about the Heisenberg uncertainty principle stood there, watching him with an amused expression. "Looking for something?" "Xenobiologist Zaphon?" she asked calmly. Krell's skin flickered between surprised orange and suspicious purple. "What is this place? Who are you people really?" She smiled. "I'm Dr. Olivia Blackwood, Director of First Contact Assessment for the Earth Defense Coalition." and I think it's time we had an honest conversation." She gestured for him to follow her inside. Instead of returning to the community gathering, she led him down a hallway that, according to Krell's scanner, shouldn't have fit within the building's exterior dimensions. They stopped at what appeared to be a solid wall. She placed her hand against it, and the surface rippled like liquid before sliding apart. Krell's 4 eyes widened simultaneously as they entered a vast underground complex humming with technology far beyond what humans should possess. Holographic displays hovered in midair, showing real-time tracking of the boundless curiosity in orbit. Lab stations were staffed by humans working with equipment that rivaled or exceeded Confederation standards. "Welcome to Outpost 42, Dr. Blackwood said. "One of several thousand monitoring stations we maintain across the planet." This is Krell struggled to find words. "Advanced?" she suggested with a slight smile. "Yes, we get that a lot." Krell's mind raced to comprehend the implications. "Your entire planetary civilization is a facade." "Not entirely. Much of human civilization is exactly as it appears. We're still working through our growing pains as a species," she explained, leading him through the facility. "But our technological development has followed a somewhat unconventional path." They entered a large circular room where, to Krell's shock, his entire team was already seated around a conference table, looking equally stunned. The man who had first greeted them stood at the head of the table, now dressed in a sleek uniform rather than casual clothing. "Ah, Dr. Blackwood, you've brought our final guest," he said cheerfully. "Xenobiologist Zaphon, please join us. I'm Admiral Jackson Breaker, Earth Defense Fleet." "Earth Defense Fleet?" Krell repeated weakly, taking a seat beside Plex, whose scales had paled to a light green with shock. "Yes," Admiral Breaker confirmed. "We've maintained a presence throughout our solar system and beyond for approximately 300 of your years now. But we've found it advantageous to keep certain aspects of our development hidden from casual observation." "But why?" Tark asked, his transparent body pulsing with confusion. "Why maintain the illusion of being a primitive species?" Dr. Blackwood took over the explanation. "History and caution. You're actually the 27th alien species to discover Earth, believing us to be a primitive civilization ripe for guidance." Her tone made it clear what she thought of that concept. "The quarantine protocol was established after our first few encounters with galactic civilizations," Admiral Breaker continued. "We discovered that visitors' intentions became much clearer when they believed they were dealing with a defenseless, primitive species." A hologram activated in the center of the table, showing records of previous alien contacts. Krell recognized several species, including some that were part of the Confederation. "Some came as genuine explorers or scientists," Dr. Blackwood explained, highlighting several entries. "Others came as conquerors, resource exploiters, or religious converters." She gave Krell a pointed look. "And some came with the patronizing intention to guide us toward what they considered proper civilization." Krell's skin darkened with embarrassment. "I meant no offense. The Confederation protocols for developing worlds are based on the assumption that your civilization's path is the only correct one," Admiral Breaker interrupted firmly. "An assumption we found to be common among galactic societies." Mira, who had been silent until now, asked the question that was on all their minds. How did humans advance so quickly without being noticed? Our historical records show no evidence of human participation in galactic affairs. Dr. Blackwood smiled. "We've been careful. When we discovered faster than light travel, we also developed methods to hide our emissions and activities. We've been quietly exploring the galaxy for over 2 centuries now, observing other civilizations, learning without interfering." "But your planet still shows all the signs of early industrial development," Krell protested. "The pollution, the inefficient energy systems, the social inequalities. As I said, much of human civilization is genuinely as it appears," Dr. Blackwood acknowledged with a hint of sadness. We chose a different path than most species. Instead of elevating our entire civilization at once, we created a parallel development track. Most humans live their lives unaware of our true capabilities, while a select portion of humanity advances our technological frontiers. Admiral Breaker leaned forward. Which brings us to the important question, Xenobiologist Zaphon. Now that you know the truth about humanity, what do you intend to do with this information? Krell stared at Admiral Breaker, his four eye stalks swiveling independently as he tried to process everything. I don't know, he admitted honestly. The Confederation protocols have no contingency for this scenario. Let me help clarify your situation, Admiral Breaker said, tapping a control on the table. A holographic display materialized, showing the boundless curiosity in orbit. Your ship has been contained within a temporal stasis field since approximately 4 minutes after you landed. Captain Nalora and her crew are fine just experiencing a localized time dilation. For them, barely seconds have passed. That's impossible, Plex blurted out. Temporal manipulation technology is theoretical at best. Even the most advanced Confederation scientists haven't mastered it yet. Dr. Blackwood finished with a slight smile. We've found that different civilizations develop technologies in different sequences. Humanity happened to crack temporal mechanics relatively early in our development cycle. Mira's skin had shifted to a pale, frightened white. Are we prisoners? Guests, corrected Dr. Blackwood firmly. Guests who attempted a somewhat presumptuous first contact, but guests nonetheless. Admiral Breaker nodded. We have no hostile intentions toward the Confederation or your vessel. This is simply standard procedure for evaluating first contact scenarios. I don't understand, Krell said, his scientific mind struggling to accept what he was seeing. Our intelligence suggests humans only achieved spaceflight 60 years ago. How could you possibly have advanced to this level so quickly? Dr. Blackwood exchanged glances with the Admiral before responding. Perhaps a demonstration would be more convincing than an explanation. At her signal, the entire room transformed. The walls seemed to dissolve, revealing what appeared to be an enormous command center stretching hundreds of meters in every direction. Thousands of humans worked at various stations, surrounded by technology that made the boundless curiosity look like a child's toy. This is Earth Defense Command, Admiral Breaker explained. One of several dozen similar facilities hidden throughout the solar system. A massive holographic display dominated the center of the room, showing not just Earth's solar system, but a three-dimensional map of the galaxy with thousands of highlighted points. Each illuminated location represents a human outpost, research station, or observation post, Dr. Blackwood explained. We've been systematically exploring and documenting the galaxy for over 2 centuries. Krell's jaw dropped. But that's more extensive than even the Confederation's exploration network. Yes, Admiral Breaker agreed simply. It is. The display zoomed in on a familiar star system, Krell's own homeworld, Vexrilia. We've maintained an observation post in your system for approximately 73 years, Dr. Blackwood continued casually. We find the Vexrilian approach to mathematical theory particularly interesting. Your species has a unique perspective on multidimensional calculus that's quite refreshing. Krell's skin turned pale with shock. You've been studying us? All this time? Just as you intended to study us, Admiral Breaker pointed out. Though we've been considerably more discreet about it. Another gesture, and the display shifted to show various alien spacecraft designs, including perfect renderings of Confederation vessels. We maintain a comprehensive database of all known spacefaring civilizations, Dr. Blackwood explained, including detailed technical specifications of their vessels, weapons capabilities, cultural development, and sociological patterns. Tark's transparent body pulsed with agitation. But if you have all this technology, why maintain the pretense of being primitive? Why not join the galactic community? Admiral Breaker's expression turned serious. historical precedent. Before we developed our quarantine protocol, we had several unfortunate encounters with other civilizations. Not everyone who discovers a new species has benevolent intentions. Most notably, Dr. Blackwood added, we observed how species that joined your confederation were quietly pressured to conform to confederation standards and ideologies, often at the expense of their unique cultural development paths. Krell wanted to protest but found he couldn't. The Confederation's guidance of developing worlds often did result in them becoming cultural and technological mirrors of the dominant Confederation species. Additionally, Admiral Breaker continued, maintaining our cover has strategic advantages. It's much easier to observe the true nature of other civilizations when they believe they're dealing with primitives. Your own behavior upon discovering Earth is a perfect example. Krell winced at the implied criticism. I truly believed we were helping. Most do, Dr. Blackwood acknowledged, her tone softening slightly. But help imposed from above is rarely as beneficial as its providers believe. A new display appeared, showing recordings of Krell's enthusiastic presentations to the ship's crew, his grandiose plans for guiding humanity. Watching himself, Krell felt a wave of embarrassment wash over him. I appear rather condescending, don't I? He admitted. Quite, Plex agreed dryly, seemingly having recovered some of her composure. I tried to tell you. Admiral Breaker leaned forward. Xenobiologist Zaphon, contrary to what you might now be thinking, we don't view your arrival as hostile or malicious, merely presumptuous. The question remains, how do we proceed from here? Krell considered the situation. His entire mission, his understanding of humanity, had been based on false assumptions. Yet instead of imprisonment or worse, these humans were treating him and his team with surprising respect, given the circumstances. I don't know, he admitted. This revelation changes everything. The Confederation protocols assume technological superiority in first contact scenarios. Yes, most civilizations seem to make that assumption, Dr. Blackwood noted. It's one reason we maintain our quarantine policy. Mira, whose scientific curiosity had apparently overcome her initial fear, asked, how did humans advance so rapidly? Our evolutionary studies suggest your species should still be millennia away from this level of development. Necessity and circumstance, Admiral Breaker replied. During our early atomic age, we recovered technology from a crashed extraterrestrial vessel. Reverse engineering those components accelerated our development significantly. But the real catalyst was the realization that we weren't alone in the universe and that not everyone out there was friendly. The Zorix incident, Dr. Blackwood added, bringing up an image of a predatory-looking alien species Krell didn't recognize. Their scout ships arrived approximately 200 years ago, with a harvesting fleet behind them. Had they found Earth as primitive as they expected, humanity would have become livestock. A chill ran through Krell. The Zorix were notorious in certain parts of the galaxy, though the Confederation had little contact with them. What happened? Tark asked, his scientific curiosity evident in the rapid pulsing of his transparent form. We captured their technology and used it against the main fleet, Admiral Breaker said simply. After that, Earth's leadership made a unified decision. We would advance our technology in secret while maintaining the appearance of a developing world. And you've been doing this for 2 centuries? Krell asked, finally beginning to comprehend the scale of the deception. Hiding your true capabilities from dozens of visiting species? 27 prior to yourselves, Dr. Blackwood confirmed. Each encounter has taught us something valuable about galactic politics and culture. Your confederation, for instance, seems benevolent in intent, if somewhat paternalistic in execution. Which brings us back to our original question, Admiral Breaker said. Now that you know the truth about humanity, what happens next? Because while we've been having this pleasant conversation, our defense systems have neutralized 3 separate attempts by your ship's AI to send automated distress signals to Confederation headquarters. 3 days later. Krell stood on the bridge of the boundless curiosity, watching Earth recede in the viewscreen. Captain Nalora and the rest of the crew had been released from the temporal stasis field with no awareness that anything unusual had occurred to them. Krell's team had conducted a brief, uneventful survey of a primitive human settlement and returned with their findings. Only Krell, Plex, Mira, and Tark knew the truth. And they had all agreed to Admiral Breaker's terms. "You're unusually quiet, Xenobiologist," Captain Nalora observed. "No enthusiastic lectures about humanity's potential? No grand plans for guiding their development?" Krell's skin shifted to a thoughtful blue. "My assessment has evolved, Captain. I believe humanity should be left to develop at their own pace, without Confederation interference." "That's surprisingly restrained, coming from you," Nalora said, her crystalline exoskeleton glinting as she turned toward him. "May I ask what changed your mind?" Krell carefully worded his response, honoring his agreement with Earth's leadership. "Let's just say I discovered evidence that humans may be more resilient and resourceful than initial scans suggested. Their development path appears to be unique. Interference might do more harm than good." "Interesting," Nalora mused. "And the encrypted data package you've authorized for transmission to Confederation headquarters?" "A recommendation for a non-interference directive for Earth, along with some cautionary notes about humanity's potential," Krell replied. What the captain didn't know was that the data package also contained a formal treaty between Earth and the Confederation, negotiated by Krell as a designated representative after Admiral Breaker had shown him exactly what Earth's defensive capabilities could do. The demonstration had involved the complete disassembly and reassembly of an asteroid the size of a small moon in under 3 minutes, using technology that defied Confederation understanding of physics. The treaty was simple. The Confederation would classify Earth as a protected developing world, off limits to colonization, exploitation, or guidance. In return, humanity would continue its careful, measured emergence into the galactic community over the next several decades, with minimal disruption to existing power structures. Admiral Breaker had been remarkably reasonable about the whole thing. "We're not interested in galactic domination or power games," he had explained. "Our primary concern has always been the protection of Earth and the self-determination of our species." "And if the Confederation refuses to honor the treaty?" Krell had asked. Dr. Blackwood's smile had been polite but chilling. "Then we'll be forced to introduce ourselves more directly. Our analysis suggests this would be destabilizing for numerous civilizations, possibly leading to widespread panic in some quarters. We'd prefer a gradual, controlled introduction." Plex approached, interrupting Krell's recollections. "The official report is complete," she said quietly. "Exactly as we discussed." Krell nodded. "Thank you, First Officer." "Do you think they'll believe it?" she asked, her voice low. "That humans are simply an unusually adaptable primitive species deserving of special protection?" "They'll believe what's convenient," Krell replied. "No one wants to consider the alternative that there's been an advanced civilization quietly watching us all for centuries, cataloging our strengths and weaknesses, with technology that makes our most advanced systems look primitive by comparison." As the ship accelerated to FTL speeds, Krell thought about the message Admiral Breaker had asked him to convey unofficially to the Confederation leadership. "We come in peace, but we come prepared for war. Your choice which you get." Earth disappeared from view, looking like nothing more than another insignificant blue dot against the cosmic backdrop. But Krell knew better now. That small, null, unassuming planet harbored one of the most dangerous and advanced species in the galaxy, a species that had perfected the art of playing primitive while watching the stars. And soon, very soon, humanity would step onto the galactic stage on their own terms. Krell could only hope the Confederation would be wise enough to welcome them as equals when they did.